Hello, I'm Emily Hawthorne, a Middle East and North Africa analyst at RANE. This podcast is brought to you by RANE Worldview, the premier digital publication for objective geopolitical intelligence and analysis. Subscribe today at stratfor.com.
Welcome to RANE's Essential Geopolitics podcast. I'm Emily Donahue. Thanks for joining us. In late February, Lebanese security forces say they disrupted 3 planned attacks linked to the Islamic State terror group. The targets were Shiite religious sites in the southern suburbs of Beirut. Charles Thorson is a RANE security analyst. He's here to discuss what happens next. Welcome, Charles.
Hi, Emily.
So before we get into what happens next, can you discuss the details of the Beirut plot?
Sure. Lebanese security forces disrupted 3 planned attacks linked to Islamic State. The Lebanese Interior Minister stated that the Islamic State cell involved in the attack was based in a Palestinian refugee camp and planned to conduct 3 suicide bomb and shooting attacks targeting 3 separate religious Shiite sites in Beirut southern suburbs. The targets included 2 religious compounds and an unspecified religious site. So they were fairly complex attacks. Lebanese security forces disrupted them using an undercover operative. The attackers appear to have been Palestinian refugees, and this has been a concern in Lebanon, particularly as the economy's gotten worse, that Palestinian refugees in Lebanon are going to be open to radicalization, particularly by Islamic State. Palestinian refugees have been in Lebanon since the 1940s. They were kicked out of what became the State of Israel, and they've been living as refugees in Lebanon. Their status in Lebanon is generally the Lebanese security forces do not police the camps unless we have a situation like these where militants based in the camps are targeting Lebanese targets outside of the refugee camps. In general, the refugee camps police their own, and they've been generally hotbeds of radicalization over the last 4 or 5 years at the very least. There have been some Al-Qaeda cells that were connected to Palestinian refugee camps in the early mid-2000s, and more recently there have been occasional flare-ups of violence inside the camps. So these areas are particularly impoverished and particularly open as long-term refugees to potential radicalization. And more recently, they've been really hard hit by the economic downturn in Lebanon.
Charles, let's talk about what effect these attacks or foiled attacks and future plots might have on Lebanese security forces.
So future attacks like these have the propensity to stretch Lebanese security forces beyond where they are right now. Lebanese security forces are already busy dealing with maintaining peace between various sects. There's been sectarian violence in Lebanon in recent months. Lebanese security forces are also busy dealing with protests and other kinds of demonstrations and other dealing with facing other security challenges in Lebanon. So more plots like these could stretch Lebanese security forces further, and make them less resilient and less able to deal with other sectarian developments as they arise.
So speaking of that downturn, how would a successful IS attack, should it happen, impact sectarian strife that already exists in Lebanon?
A potential Islamic State attack could have very significant consequences for sectarian strife in Lebanon, particularly if it's an attack along the lines of what we saw in 2015 when Islamic State conducted a very serious attack in Beirut southern suburbs, which killed, I believe, over 80 Shiite worshippers. It could potentially spark a backlash from Hezbollah, which is the guardian of the Shiites in Lebanon, and spark a sectarian retaliation against Sunnis in Lebanon. So that could escalate or lead to an escalatory cycle of sectarian violence in Lebanon.
And is RANE watching for this eventuality?
Yes, we are. Particularly looking for more foiled attacks to get a sense of was this a single Islamic State cell, or are there more? To what extent are there other cells operating in Lebanon?
Charles Thorson is a global security analyst with RANE. RANE Worldview offers objective security threat intelligence covering the global landscape. You can subscribe today at strat4.com. Right now we have an excellent subscription price. Go to strat4.com for details. I'm Emily Donahue. Thanks for listening.